There's a reason why corruption is so rife, because government is the only game in town. Yes, let's denounce corruption, but let us not forget that wealth inequality, the class system in the Philippines, and the way that international agencies and international capital is underdeveloping the country, this all contribute to corruption.
Magandang umaga mga kaibigan. Ito po ulit si Caloy Conde para sa isa namang episode ng ating podcast ng Open Talk. Siyempre ang pinakamainit na talakayan pa rin hanggang ngayon ay yung tungkol dito nga sa korapsyon na nangyayari sa Department of Public Works and Highways na kinasasangkutan ng mga contractor at mga ilang miyembro ng legislatura. Ang laging namamayani ngayon sa narrative ay ganid lang talaga itong mga diskaya, itong mga contractor, itong mga congressman, at mayroon pa nga ngayon bago yung mga senador, na itong mga to ay ganid lang talaga. Pero suriin natin yan. Ito ba ay talagang pagiging ganid lang? Ito ba ay talagang kasakiman lang? Ano ang mga factors kung bakit nagagawa nila ito to begin with? Bakit nahahayaan silang ganito? Maliban sa usapin ng walang maayos na checks and balance or accountability mechanism sa gobyerno, ano pa ang iba pang posibleng dahilan kung bakit nagagawa nila itong ginagawa nila? Noong isang araw, kinausap ko si Walden Bello, isa sa mga respetadong public intellectual, political activist. Palagi natin siyang napapanood, palagi natin siyang nababasa, palagi natin siyang nakikita sa kalye, nagpoprotesta. Isa siya sa mga leader ng kaliwa dito sa Pilipinas. At ang pinag-usapan namin ay yung tungkol dito sa mga tanong ko nga kanina. Kung ano ba talaga ang dahilan kung bakit nangyayari ito to begin with. Ipagpalagay na natin na sakim ang mga tao. Ipagpalagay na natin na ganid ang mga taong ito. At nakakita sila ng paraan sa DPWH, sa mga local government units, sa Kongreso, para mangurakot ng bilyon-bilyong pera. Pero ayon nga kay Walden, mas malalim pa ang dahilan dito eh. Tinatawag niya itong structural problems sa Pilipinas. Ano nga ba itong mga to? Para dun sa mga makakaliwa o sa mga progresibong grupo, yung mga ang tingin sa ating political at ekonomiya ay mas malalim kaysa sa karaniwang tao, ang ugat ng mga problema natin ay medyo malalim na. Itong mga nararanasan natin ngayon na mga skandalo, itong kahirapan, itong kawalan ng kaayusan sa pamumuhay natin bilang Pilipino ay may trace mo talaga ito doon sa mga basic na mga problema ng ating bansa, na mga basic na problema na siya yung mga tinutukoy ni Joe Masison at ng mga komunista noon pa. Siyempre, pag tinignan mo, parang, oy, sandali, mga kaliwa na to, mga pula na to, dapat bang pag-usapan natin itong mga to? Well, depende sa bias mo yan eh. Kasi kung ayaw mong pakinggan yung sinasabi ng mga progresibo, hindi mo talaga maiintindihan ng maayos kung ano yung mga nangyayari ngayon. Sa isang banda naman, I'm sure yung mga nasa kanan, yung mga medyo pabor sa mga kapitalista halimbawa, ay iba yung pananaw dito. Pero hindi natin may pagkakait ang validity ng mga sinasabi nila. Kasama na dito yung pagpuwersa sa ating bansa na tumalima sa mga kondisyon, mga conditionalities ng mga institusyon sa katulad ng World Bank at International Monetary Fund. Itong mga kondisyonis na to, sa tingin ni na Walden at iba pa, ay pinigilan ang pag-unlad ng bansa. Na sila ito nagpapautang ng bilyon-bilyon sa atin kapalit ng pagtalima nga natin sa mga gusto nilang mangyari. Ano ba itong mga gusto nilang mangyari? Buksan ang Pilipinas para sa mga dayuhang negosyo. Andito yung sinasabi ng deregulasyon tsaka privatization. Ito yung sistema na tinatanggal sa Estado yung responsibilidad kung paano ang pamahalaan ang ekonomiya natin. Kung bakit ang taas-taas ng bilihin ng lahat, ang bababa ng mga sweldo. Isang example na lang ng privatization at saka yung kung anong impact nito ay halimbawa yung pinagbibigay na ng gobyerno yung mga airports natin, mga terminals natin sa mga pribadong interes. So ang ginagawa ng mga ito, tinataasan yung mga terminal fee at kung ano-ano pang mga bayarin. Ang punot dulo ng privatization ay ang nakikinabang dito ay yung pribadong kapital, hindi yung mga ordinaryong tao. Hindi basta-basta na itataas ang mga sahod ng mga manggagawa. Andyan yung sangkaterbang violation ng labor rights, yung mga union rights. Dahil na rin sa mga structural adjustments na ito at mga kondisyones ng mga multilateral agencies na ito, nagkautang-utang tayo, di ba? So, in fact, yung mahigit 30% ng national budget natin napupunta lang sa pagbabayad ng ating foreign debt. Malaking bagay yun. Isipin mo na lang, isa ka pamilya, halos kalahati ng budget mo napupunta sa pagbabayad ng utang. Hindi talaga sustainable. Meron at meron talagang magigipit, meron at meron talagang maghihirap. Ang resulta, lugmok pa rin ang marami sa kahirapan. Matindi pa rin yung inequality, ito yung mga hindi pagkapantay-pantay. Matindi pa rin yung kakulangan ng basic services. At syempre, dahil naghihirap ang Pilipinas, napakadali para sa mga politiko, sa mga trapo, sa mga political dynasties na pasukin ang pamumuno at sila ngayon itong naghahari-harian sa mga komunidad at sila yung nagdidikta kung ano ang dapat gawin ng mga mamamayan kahit ano pa yan. Itong klaseng sitwasyon ay nagbigay ng puwang para sa mga traditional politicians, mga trapo, mga political dynasties para mamayagpag. In fact, dahil nga sa hindi na maibigay ng gobyerno yung mga basic services para sa mamamayan, yan ang dahilan kung bakit halimbawa mga 4Ps, mga AKAP na yan, yung pamimigay ng mga ayuda na yan, mga politiko na ang gumagawa. Kahit dyan sa level na yan, nakikita mo na yung korupsyon. Ang mamamayan naman, itong mga voters, wala silang choice. Kundi iboto itong mga trapo, itong mga political dynasty na to kasi sila itong nagpupunta sa communities nila, nagbibigay ng ayuda, nagbibigay ng ilang libo tuwing eleksyon. Kaya nandito tayo ngayon. Kaya nagkaroon ng lakas ng loob itong mga politiko na to na makikuntsabahan sa mga kontraktor, sa mga DPWH at kung kani-kanino pa para nakawin yung perang dapat sana ay napupunta sa mamamayan. Si Walden Bello nga pala ay naglungsad kamakailan lang ng kanyang libro. Ito yung tinatawag na ang title nitong libro nito ay Global Battlefields. At dito nilahad niya yung karanasan niya bilang isang aktivista, bilang isang public intellectual hindi lang sa Pilipinas kundi sa buong mundo. Available na yata ang libro nito sa Shopee, sa Lazada at ito published ng Ateneo de Manila University Press. Ito po yung naging talakayan namin ni Walden Bello. You being the public intellectual, a foremost public intellectual in the Philippines and globally as well, I'm sure you've followed what's happening in our country the past how many weeks? All the scandals
Yeah,
surrounding corruption and the
yeah, yeah.
political intramurals. I wonder, what can you say about that? I mean, are there any thoughts that come to mind?
And an activist and a writer, an analyst, my focus has always been on the structural issues of Philippine society. You know, what keeps us underdeveloped? What are the class forces that keep the Philippines down? And what are the policies, no? Like yung mga neoliberal policies, pushed by the IMF and the World Bank, that have really been, in my sense, the central problems faced by our country.
Okay.
And that we have to confront these structural issues, particularly the way that capitalism and globalization has really made our country a plaything in the world, so that now we're just reduced to a country that exports labor, because so many of our industries and agriculture have been damaged by policies. And yun talaga yung number one advocacy ko, no? As an analyst and a political activist. But there has also been this part of me that was when I was in Congress, okay?
Yeah.
In parliamentary politics, where I became exposed to all the shenanigans, that were happening in the country, the whole corruption bit and all of that, no? So it's not new, okay? I led exposés, okay, when I was head of the Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs, and resigned from Congress because sinabi ko kay Pinoy during that time that we cannot have double standards. Kung sinabi lang, kung walang corrupt, walang mahirap, you just cannot use that against your enemies. You also have to use it against your friends.
Yeah.
And you remember there was that disbursement acceleration program in which this was a secret slush fund that was exposed. And at that point in time, I told Pinoy, look, one of your people, the budget secretary himself, is funneling so much money to his wife's congressional district doon sa Batanes, the smallest congressional district in the country, was receiving the sixth largest allocation. So
Yeah.
sabi ko, hindi pare yan. You have to dismiss this, guys. You have to dismiss Abad. Ayaw makinig si Pinoy. Okay? And sabi niya, oh, just because maliit yung Batanes, doesn't mean it receives the smallest allocation. That was I met with him, and he tried to avoid the issue, and at that point, kasama na rin yung Mama Sapa noon. We need not talk
Yeah.
about that. But I said I cannot be part of this coalition anymore, so I resigned from Congress as Akbayan representative, because at that point Akbayan was still supporting Pinoy, and I said I could not
Yeah. I
support.
remember
So
that.
yeah, I took my stand against corruption, and I resigned.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was not an easy thing to do because it brought me up against my friends in the party who still were supporting the administration. And it had economic consequences for me, like I lost my job and everything else. But I think it was important to show, as a matter of principle, especially to young people, that there are politicians, there are people, public servants, that can take a strong stand against corruption, even if it means they voluntarily relinquish positions of power. So it was the only resignation on principle in the history of the Philippine Congress. Okay, and of course, people then told me, "You're crazy. Nobody resigns from Congress. Everybody's trying to get in." But I think it was important to really show our people that you can have principled politicians. I'm not saying this to nagpapangat ako sa ng bangko, no? It's just that I felt that if you're going to take a stand on corruption, you really should put yourself on the line,
Yeah.
even if it costs you something.
Yeah.
And that's why it's good that there's a lot of protests now about, the Diskaya, all of this
Flood control. Yeah.
corruption, flood control and everything. And it's good that our young people are there. But my challenge to everybody is put yourselves on the line. Okay? Let's not just use Facebook. Go out there, and hey, look at all those people in Indonesia that are out on the streets calling, it's now into the second week of protests, and that's what I mean. Let's put ourselves on the line. Let's just not use Facebook posts and everything. I've hesitated to, to engage in Facebook on this corruption issue, because I just feel that you've got to go beyond words, and you've got to put yourself on the line, and that's the challenge that I have for our compatriots. No, the challenge is, let's go out on the streets like what they're doing in Indonesia. That's really, I think, the challenge right now that we face. I have been engaged in one area of calling corrupt people into accountability recently, and that's been the exposing and making sure that the world knows about how the Israeli government has been corrupting journalism
Yeah.
here by bringing all these corrupt journalists to Gaza to justify genocide. And
Yeah.
that's, sabi ko, hindi maaari yan. Okay,
Yeah.
we have to get that out there. And that's where I've been engaged in recently in terms of a post that I have made, is to ask our friends in journalism, hey, you really have to do something about these things. Because this is so scandalous
Yeah.
that people are brought to Gaza to justify genocide. They write articles about it, glorifying the Israeli Defense Forces. No, this is not acceptable. Kaya ang hinihingi ko sa mga journalist friends natin, Caloy, is you have to police your ranks. You cannot
Mhm.
allow these people to make these outrageous
Yes. Yeah.
statements and let it go. No,
Yeah.
kasi what has, aside from you and a few others, there has not been people who have come out to denounce
Yeah.
this bribery that's taking place by a foreign power of our journalists.
Yeah.
So I feel that kailangan talaga that the Philippine journalistic community should take the line on this because it's a scandal. Yes.
What I can tell you, Walden, about that is that since you posted that and since we've talked about this, in fact, we devoted a whole episode with Jam Alindogan on this one.
Yeah. Yes. I'm
The
so glad you did that.
the journalism community in the Philippines has somehow nire-recognize naman nila yung issue. Some of them
Mhm.
have come out and said their piece against the junkets, the sponsorship by the Israeli
Mhm.
government of these few journalists. But as you said, there needs to be some more needs to be done, and
Definitely.
I
Yeah.
think this is a moment for the Philippine media to really think about not just the ethics of it, but in not just the ethics of practicing journalism, but the ethics of showing to the world that as if nothing's wrong with what Israel is doing.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah, so maganda yung I think maganda yung
Yeah.
nagiging kalalabasan nito, But I want to go back a little bit,
Yeah. Sure.
Walden. So in a way, having worked with Congress during your days in Akbayan, in a way you were familiar with all of these issues inside the House of
Mhm.
Representatives, right? I mean,
Mhm. Mhm.
familiar in terms that in the sense that you were moving in the same circle as many of these congressmen, and so all of these corruption issues surrounding flood control projects, surrounding ghost projects that are being orchestrated by the Department of Public Wealth, Public Works and Highways, sorry, Public Wealth, Department of Public Works and
Yeah. Right.
Highways, in cahoots with many legislators in both houses of Congress. I mean,
Sure.
uh, is there a way to kind of draw a link here, a line here between their conduct and, of course, the history of the Philippines government and bureaucracy with corruption and all of these structural issues that you guys in the left have always railed against?
Yes, ang problema kasi rito with the underdevelopment of the country, okay, with the way that the industry has been smashed and agriculture too, and uh, you know, agriculture and industry should really be sources of national wealth. No,
Mm-hmm.
of course, sustainable growth in industry and sustainable growth in agriculture should be a process that creates wealth that gets redistributed to people. No? And the problem is that with the stunting of our economy by neoliberal policies, no, that subject our economy to global capitalist forces, and the government becomes, an engine of capital accumulation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so where this becomes sort of the the mechanism that many ambitious people get into, not in order to be able to be of public service, but in order to use government as a means of accumulating wealth.
Well, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
especially since outside of government, you know, so many areas of the economy are in such bad shape. So a lot of these people who are out to make a buck gravitate to government. Use the rhetoric of public service in order to use government and people's taxes, no, as the mechanism by which they can accumulate private wealth. So yan yung connection. I think that's the connection that with the underdevelopment of forced underdevelopment of other sectors of our economy, so that they can create wealth that can be distributed. Uh, what happens is that government becomes the only mechanism for accumulating capital, especially by all of these people. This is, I believe, the structural connection between underdevelopment and corruption. No,
Yeah.
and I think we must always keep those two together, because otherwise it's just moralizing.
Yeah.
Corrupt, corrupt, corrupt.
Mhm.
And but there's a reason why corruption is so rife, because government is the only game in town. Yes, let's denounce corruption, but let us not forget, that wealth inequality and the class system in the Philippines, and the way that international agencies and international capital is underdeveloping the country, that this all contribute to corruption.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger problem that we have, and corruption is a problem, but the bigger problem that we have is the severe inequality of wealth in this country.
Yeah.
And the bigger problem that we have is all these monopolistic businesses, that corner the wealth. No, and these are the businesses that bribe the politicians.
Yeah.
So so my connection lahat yan.
Yeah.
So let's not forget the structural issues. Otherwise, it's empty rhetoric.
Yeah,
It's
that's true.
just it's just moralizing.
Susugan ko lang yan, Walden, because, in the sense that the government, as you say, is the only game in town, may mga implication yan, of course, because if you are, for instance, a member of the political dynasty in a certain particular province, and yun nga, because having contracts, public work
Sure.
contract with the government is the easiest and probably most lucrative way you can accumulate
Yes.
wealth.
Yes.
There's a disincentive, therefore, to even consider, like, improving the local economy by other means, and to the point na masyado ka nang nasanay sa corruption, and then wala ka na, yun na lang lagi ang gagawin mo. And I think this is the story of a lot of political dynasties in the Philippines. Ang question ko sa iyo ngayon, Walden, is just, probably better than most that international aid agencies, donors, foreign governments often have a lot to say about how countries like the Philippines should conduct themselves as far as spending money, lalo na pag ODA, Official Development Assistance, mga ganyan, or even lagi silang nagpiprescribe ng mga anti-corruption strategies on the local bureaucracy. But since all of this have come out, wala akong narinig from them. We know that every now and then the Asia Development Bank, the World Bank, the IMF would come out with, reports recommending to the Philippine government they have to do this and that to fight corruption. But where is all of that?
I think now what's happening is that yung mask of hypocrisy ng mga Western agencies na, kayo mga dyan sa the Global South, you're so corrupt, and here are the standards that we have. Well, that is being ripped apart now by Trump, and that's
Okay.
one of the probably
Wala nang moral authority.
good things. Wala nang moral authority, and you're seeing that. How can the World Bank or how can a U.S. agency, how can the IMF now basically say that you have to keep your finances in line when you have the president of the most powerful country in the
Yeah.
world ripping off the public till, no?
Yeah.
So nawalan
Mhm.
yung moral authority. So I think that might be the reason why they have been silent
Mhm.
during this whole process. Kasi there are scandals breaking out all over the West
Yeah.
about corruption, and it's not only the United States.
Of course. Yeah.
So yeah, that's now that's that's one of the explanations, I think, for the silence
Mm.
of the silence of these agencies at this point.
As the West loses their moral high ground in terms
Mhm.
of good governance and corruption, it almost feels like countries like the Philippines and probably even Indonesia or some such might be left to their own devices.
Yes, I think so. I mean, first of all, I think we have to confront our demons, uh,
Mm.
and one of the demons that we really have is corruption. But beyond corruption, we have to confront the structural forces that create so much poverty and inequality in the
Yeah.
country. We cannot divorce reform, uh, social reform, from the battle against corruption. No, and we cannot divorce the fight to be able to enact policies that will allow us to really develop, from the structural adjustment, very repressive economic policies that have been imposed on us, and which our technocrats have, followed, without any word of protest. No? So, yeah, we are at this inflection point where we have to look inwards and say, okay, now, we have to take this on ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we what I think this, especially the younger people, will have to be the ones to really take this as a big challenge. Is Let's fight corruption, but we also have to really transform the structure of the country.
Yeah.
I think they will, one of the things that I think this new generation will learn is that all of our problems are interconnected, and that we cannot just shout against corruption. We really have to push things like land reform. We really have to have push for the policies, that would tax the rich, um, create, the possibilities for more income, equal income redistribution in this country.
Yeah.
So I would. So this is when you're talking about the opportunity, this is the opportunity that we have right now. How do we go beyond just attacking corruption to attacking the ills of the social system that encourages these people, that corrupt people, to go to government and use government instead of public service, use it as a mechanism for wealth accumulation? It's what you said, Caloy, is so true. You go to any of these different areas in the country where dynasties rule, and you can see just from the physical aspects, that money that should be going to infrastructure is going into people's pockets,
Yeah.
and go to any place, and the public infrastructure is so underdeveloped. Roads are bad,
Yeah.
and public services are really poor. um, Policemen are corrupt. And makikita mo talaga. And then you have all the gleaming
Mhm.
private skyscrapers, uh, all the SM malls and that sort of thing. So there's all this private wealth that is surrounded by public squalor, you know,
Yeah.
and a lot of that is because, in fact, instead of being poured into flood control and other infrastructure, it's being raked in
Mhm. Yeah.
politicians. For instance, just go. I have to go to Davao every month and a half
Mhm.
because
Oh, the
there's
case,
this
the
cyber
libel
libel.
case, yeah.
Yeah, there's the cyber libel case that the camp of the vice president has lodged against me. So my trial is ongoing. But you know what? You go to Davao, and the infrastructure is so bad. The city around, the city center and everything else.
It's not
And
Singapore by any means.
definitely not. No, but I mean, but I don't want to single out Davao, but Davao is representative of the kind of policies where government resources, go into, private hands rather than into public services. And I think this is shown in different parts of the country, and so opportunity talaga ito.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see if we can transform this moment from just another battle against corruption, another Napoles scandal, into something, a sustained effort to transform, the system. And ito yata yung challenge sa millennials at sa Gen Z natin,
Yeah.
to grab this opportunity. Just to underline the basic point, I think we should link corruption to the structural problems of our society, including inequality and the way that our industry and agriculture have been devastated by policies, so that
Yeah.
people like the Discayas see that government becomes the only mechanism for capital accumulation.
Walden, thank you so much for the insight and all this, context. And I wish to see you soon again. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Caloy. Bye bye.